This is my attempt to explain radical hospitality to you, and it's all linked with the Bible readings we've had. Papa Panov, in the story we just had, wanted Jesus to come to his house, and so he cleaned and prepared for a very special visitor. I think we can all relate to that when we got visitors coming and we're looking forward to seeing them. We have a clean through, don't we? But the visitors he had while he waited were very ordinary people, people from his village. Nevertheless, Papa Panov did well because he showed them hospitality and made them welcome and showed kindness where he could. And I love the bit at the end where he's especially kind to the young mother with the baby, giving her warm milk to give to the child, and even giving her the special shoes he had made so that the baby would keep warm. And that story and what Papa Panov did is what radical hospitality is all about. Whether it's in our own homes, our prayer groups, the different meetings we have together, or indeed if it's on Sunday mornings during our time of worship. Everything we do as a church should have radical hospitality as its basis. And it's something we're encouraged to practice in our day-to-day Christian lives. And when we practice radical hospitality as churches, as a group of people, after all representing the family of God, we can surprise newcomers with a glimpse of the unmerited, gracious love of God that they see in Christ. They can feel the love of Christ through our actions and the way we are with them. Now, in the first reading we have, where Paul writes to the Romans, one of the verses says, "Share your belongings with your needy fellow Christians and open your homes to strangers." It's very simple, really, isn't it? It's easy to read, it's not so easy to do, I know. Now, that last part of that verse immediately brings to mind the many people in our country who've opened their homes to the Ukrainian refugees in the last year. That's exactly what went through my mind when I read that verse. So that's perhaps something you all remember and can relate to. But it's not just something huge like that, having a family stay in your home. Christian hospitality is the active desire to invite, welcome, receive, and care for those who are strangers so that they can find a spiritual home and discover for themselves the unending richness of the life in Christ. And the word radical describes that which is drastically different from ordinary practices, outside the normal, that which exceeds expectations and goes the second mile. And when our radical hospitality goes to the extremes, we should do it joyfully, not superficially. And when we do that, when we exercise this type of hospitality with a genuineness, people will recognize that our invitation is the invitation of Christ. It doesn't have to be complicated invitation. It just has to be genuine, I feel. And I want to tell you a story of a church where the congregation had made a decision that they would practice radical hospitality. They had a new mum who came to church with her baby. Now, the mum felt very self-conscious when the baby began to fuss and to cry. And she'd obviously been a bit bothered about it all. So the church leaders met and decided that they really valued having young people so highly that they had to do something to ease the discomfort of this young mother. I think we would perhaps have been in agreement with that. We would love to have more young people coming to our churches. more young families. To show support for the young mum, they bought a comfortable, well-padded rocking chair and placed it just behind the last pew of the small sanctuary. Well, that was a sort of a nice, comfortable, warm thing to do. I was just thinking, when I was a young mum, I'd probably gone in it and fallen asleep. Well, word got around, and soon they had to get 2 more rocking chairs to accommodate the mothers who found this congregation to be the friendliest around. Word, the young mum that came first would have said, well, I went to so-and-so and, they've really been friendly and helped me and even got a lovely comfy rocking chair so I can see to the baby easily. What had happened was that the church people had recognised a need and found a thoughtful way to make things more welcoming for young mothers, which was what they were being asked to do at this particular time. And another scenario, any church might look like this. A young single mum comes for the first time and stands awkwardly in the foyer with her toddler, looking around at all the people she does not know on her first visit to a church. How many of you perhaps have ever, have recently had to change churches or come to a new church? Anybody? Yes, you have. Yes. So it's very important, this first welcome, isn't it? Very important. Well, this young mum had come to the church because a friend of hers had casually mentioned how she loved the music at her church and she'd invited her to come along. But now this mum wasn't sure it was such a good idea. And she's wondering about childcare. What happens, is there anywhere that my little Johnny can go to, where someone will help look after him, read him stories, that sort of thing. She was self-conscious about the fussiness of her little one, worried that people would be worried about that. And another important thing, I think, is unsure where the toilets are and too timid to ask directions. When you don't know anyone, it is hard. And then she's doubting whether this really is the right worship service for her or whether this is even the right church. It can be very difficult joining a new church when you've just moved. So this young mum, she's got all sorts of things going through her head. Where is she to sit? Where is it going to feel right? What is it going to feel like to sit along with her child? And what if her little one makes too much noise? He's actually a very lively toddler, like they usually are. And the mum feels the need for prayer, for some connection to others, and for something to lift her above the daily grind of her job, the unending bills, the conflicts with her ex-husband, and her worries for her child. That's all the things that might be going around in this young mum's head. Now imagine what would happen if people took Jesus' words seriously in this particular scenario. They would look at this woman and try and understand the whole bundle of hopes and anxieties, desires and discomforts that she carries and think, this is a member of Jesus' family, and Jesus wants us to treat her as we would treat Jesus himself if he were here. I think that's the crux of it, really. I think, that's really the basis of radical hospitality that they say in here. With this in mind, then, what would be the quality of the welcome, the efforts to ease the awkwardness? What would be the enthusiasm to help, to serve, to graciously receive and support and encourage? Taking Jesus seriously changes congregational behaviour. Not just a few church leaders. It needs to be as many of the congregation as possible so that everyone can be active. Because it doesn't take, anyone can make, we can all make people welcome and perhaps befriend. And there are many familiar verses and stories in the Bible where Jesus encourages us to behave radically. He was always doing it. He was always there's all sorts, but the two I've chosen are these. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Do you all recognise that one? And the disciples wanted to, run along there. But he said, no, and the mothers actually were in that. Mothers and the children come to me. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And then there's this one, which I think is a really good verse to have as our way to, when we're thinking about our Christian lives. And it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbour as yourself. And that's what Jesus told the rich young ruler, didn't he?